This is the Coding Basics Pre-College module. Before you start this module, please take the pre-survey. This will be session 1. In this session, we will learn how to set up a workspace, what is coding and why is it important, input and output, statements, variables, data types, Python lists, and operators. What is coding? Coding is actually just writing instructions for computers. We tell it what to do and it will do it. Why is coding important?
I was 13 when I first got access to a computer.
My parents bought me a Macintosh in 1984 when I was 8 years old.
I was in 6th grade.
I learned to code in college.
Freshman year, first semester, intro to computer science.
I wrote a program to play tic-tac-toe.
I think it was pretty humble beginnings. I think the first program I wrote asked things like, what's your favorite color? Or how old are you?
I first learned how to make a green circle and a red square appear on the screen.
The first time I actually had something come up and say, hello world, and I made a computer do that. It was just astonishing.
Learning how to program didn't start off as wanting to learn all of computer science or trying to master this discipline or anything like that. It just started off because I wanted to do this one simple thing. I wanted to make something that was fun for myself and my sisters. And I wrote this little program and then basically just added a little bit to it. And then when I needed to learn something new, I looked it up either in a book or on the internet and then added a little bit to it.
It's really not unlike kind of playing an instrument or something, or playing a sport. It starts out being very intimidating, but you kind of get the hang of it over time.
Coding is something that can be learned, and I know it can be intimidating. A lot of things are intimidating, but what isn't?
A lot of the coding that people do is actually fairly simple. It's more about the process of breaking down problems than, sort of coming up with complicated algorithms as people traditionally think about it.
You don't have to be a genius to know how to code. You need to be determined.
Addition, subtraction, that's about it.
You should probably know your multiplication tables.
You don't have to be a genius to code. Do you have to be a genius to read?
Even if you want to become a race car driver or play baseball or build a house, all of these things have been turned upside down by software.
What it is, computers are everywhere. You want to work in agriculture? Do you want to work in entertainment? Do you want to work in manufacturing? It's just all over.
Here we are, 2013. We all depend on technology to communicate, to bank, information, and none of us know how to read and write code.
When I was in school, I was in this after-school group called the Whiz Kids. And when people found out, they laughed at me and, all these things. And I'm like, man, I don't care. I think it's cool. And, I'm learning a lot. And some of my friends have jobs.
Our policy is literally to hire as many talented engineers as we can find. The whole limit in the system is just that there just aren't enough people who are trained and have these skills today.
To get the very best people, we try to make the office as awesome as possible.
We have a fantastic chef,
Free food,
breakfast, lunch, and dinner.
free laundry,
snacks, even places to play and video games and scooters. There's all these kind of interesting things around the office and places where people can play or relax or go to think or play music or be creative.
Whether you're trying to make a lot of money or whether you just want to change the world, computer programming is an incredibly empowering skill to learn.
I think if someone had told me that software is really about humanity, that it's really about helping people by using computer technology, it would have changed my outlook a lot earlier.
To be able to actually come up with an idea and then see it in your hands and then be able to press a button and have it be in millions of people's hands. I mean, I think we're the first generation in the world that's really ever had that kind of experience.
Just to think that, I mean, you can start something in your college dorm room and you can have a set of people who haven't built a big company before come together and build something that 1 billion people use as part of their daily lives is just crazy to think about, right? It's humbling and it's amazing.
The programmers of tomorrow are the wizards of the future. You know, you're going to look like you have magic powers compared to everybody else.
I think it's amazing. I think it's the closest thing we have to a superpower.
Great coders are today's rock stars. That's it.
To get started, let's go ahead and set up our workspace using REPL. When you are on the website, go ahead and start coding by clicking the Start Coding button. Go ahead and click on Python and create a REPL. Once the screen loads, go ahead and sign up using your Google account. Once you have signed up, you will notice that on your left, you will have all your files that you are working on. Currently, you will be working on main.py. This .py is a Python extension that specifies that the file is reading Python code. You will write your code in this area here. For example, we can write hello world here. If we click the Run button, we can see the output of our code on the right here, where it says Hello World. Let's learn about input and output. First, output. We use the print function to output data to the standard output device, which will be the screen on our right in our REPL environment. We usually use output to keep track of what the code is actually doing. So, what is this code doing? Go ahead and type it out in your workspace and run the shell. Now let's learn about input. In our code, we might want to take some variables from our user. We might want to take input from our user. We would want certain data from our user in order to use it in our code. Let's learn about statements. In general, each line of code in the program is a statement. We also have comments. In Python, comments are denoted by hashtags. We use comments to explain our code, write pseudocode, and a lot more. It is a way to have notes in our code. Go ahead and try out this practice problem. Write a program to print Hello World. An important part of statements are variables. Variables are placeholders for pieces of information that can change. This is just like how we use x's and y's in math. In this example, number is our variable. In programming, we can think of a variable like a box. We put 10 into the number box. In the first line of code, this is what is happening. We can take 10 out of the number box and put 1.1 into the number box. This is what is happening in the second line of code. In general, there are some rules to follow when naming your variables to make sure that their purpose is clear and that your code can understand when you reference that variable. When naming the variables, you may use a combination of letters, numbers, and the underscore, which is denoted by this symbol right here. You may not start with a number. and you may not use one of Python's reserved words. You will be able to tell if it is a reserved word because Python will change the code color when it is a reserved word. You also want to be aware that names are case sensitive. You must type out the variable name exactly as you defined it in your first appearance of the variable. Now, go ahead and type the following code into your REPL program and run it. What will it output? Go ahead and type the lines 4 and 5 and 7 in your REPL program and run it again. What will this output? Let's learn about data types. In Python, there are 4 common data types. There are floats, which are numbers with decimals like 0.231 and 81.72. There are integers, which are numbers without decimals like 1 and 7,832. There are strings, which are characters or lines of text, such as Hello World and I love coding. Note that strings can be denoted by single or double quotes. You will need the quotes surrounding the text you want as a variable. In this case, the variable would be Hello World or I love coding. There is also another common data type called a Boolean. This is a variable that checks if a value is true or false. True with a capital T and false with a capital F are recognized especially by Python. They are recognized just the way integers are recognized by Python. The great thing about Python is that we do not have to specify the type of the variable. If we have a variable A, Python will recognize the type of the variable once we define it, which is when we write A equals something. This something could be 0.13, which makes the variable a float. It could also be 5, which makes the variable an integer. This could be Hello World surrounded by quotes, which makes the variable a string, or this could be set to the value true with a capital T, which makes the variable a Boolean. The purposes of these variables are different. Strings hold text, integers hold whole numbers for counting and rounding, floats hold decimal numbers for precision, and Booleans can hold the results of conditional statements, which we will learn about later. Let's learn about Python lists. In Python, a list is an ordered sequence of items. The list is contained in brackets with each item separated by commas. The indexes of lists start at 0 instead of 1. Each item in a list is an individual variable. Go ahead and type the following code into your REPL program and run it. What does it output? Say we have a Python list called myList. We define an empty list by setting myList equal to empty brackets, which is our first line of code. In the second line of code, we use the Python list function append to add the string I to myList. I will be added to the 0th index of the list because the list is empty. In the third line of code, we use append to add the string love to myList. Love will be added to the next empty spot on the list, which is at index 1. In the fourth line of code, we append coding to myList at the next empty spot, which is index 2. Because we started with an empty list, we can append as many elements or items we want to the list. Let's learn about operators. Operators are different mathematical operations that we can use to manipulate our variables. These are used mainly with integers and floats. We have 4 basic operators, and then the modulus operator that gives you the remainder from division. The floor division operator that rounds the result of division to the closest whole number less than the result. For example, 1.5 would round to 1. We also have the exponent operator. Go ahead and try out this practice problem. Write a program that accepts the radius of a circle from the user and outputs the area of that circle. We can use 3.14 for the value of pi. Remember that the area of the circle is equal to pi times the radius squared. We want the program to print out the radius inputted and the area calculated. This is session 2. We will learn what Python is and why you should learn it, conditional statements, loops, break and continue statements, and Python functions. What is Python and why you must learn it?
In this video, I'm going to answer the top 3 questions my students ask me about Python. What is Python? What you can do with it? And why is it so popular? In other words, what does it do that other programming languages don't? Python is the world's fastest growing and most popular programming language, not just amongst software engineers, but also amongst mathematicians, data analysts, scientists, accountants, network engineers, and even kids, because it's a very beginner-friendly programming language. So people from different disciplines use Python for a variety of different tasks, such as data analysis and visualization, artificial intelligence and machine learning, automation. In fact, this is one of the big uses of Python amongst people who are not software developers. If you constantly have to do boring, repetitive tasks, such as copying files and folders around, renaming them, uploading them to a server, you can easily write a Python script to automate all that and save you time. And that's just one example. If you continuously have to work with Excel spreadsheets, PDFs, CSV files, download websites and parse them, you can automate all that stuff with Python. So you don't have to be a software developer to use Python. You could be an accountant, a mathematician, or a scientist and use Python to make your life easier. You can also use Python to build web, mobile, and desktop applications, as well as software testing or even hacking. So Python is a multi-purpose language. Now, if you have some programming experience, you may say, but Mosh, we can do all this stuff with other programming languages. So what's the big deal about Python? Here are a few reasons. With Python, you can solve complex problems in less time with fewer lines of code. Here's an example. Let's say we want to extract the first 3 letters of the text hello world. This is the code we have to write in C#. This is how we do it in JavaScript. And here's how we do it in Python. See how short and clean the language is? And that's just the beginning. Python makes a lot of trivial things really easy with a simple yet powerful syntax. Here are a few other reasons why Python is so popular. It's a high-level language, so you don't have to worry about complex tasks such as memory management like you do in C++. It's cross-platform, which means you can build and run Python applications on Windows, Mac, and Linux. It has a huge community, so whenever you get stuck, there is someone out there to help. It has a large ecosystem of libraries, frameworks, and tools, which means whatever you want to do, it is likely that someone else has done it before, because Python has been around for over 20 years. So in a nutshell, Python is a multi-purpose language with a simple, clean, and beginner-friendly syntax. All of that means Python is awesome. Technically, everything you do with Python you can do with other programming languages, but Python's simplicity and elegance has made it grow way more than other programming languages. That's why it's the #1 language employers are looking for. So whether you are a programmer or an absolute beginner, learning Python opens up lots of job opportunities to you. In fact, the average Python developer earns a whopping $116,000 a year.
Let's start with conditional statements. The most important conditional statements you'll ever run across are if and else statements. They are used to create decisions within your code, hence the name conditional. These decisions are made based on true or false conditions. We will go over the 3 ways to use this in your code. First, there is the if and else statement. If this, then do that. You put your condition after the if and place a colon after the condition. It's important to note that the do that steps need to be indented, as we can see from the syntax on the previous slide. If you look at the chart in the corner here, it lays it out simply. We have a condition, we evaluate whether it is true or false, and if it is true, we run the code that is in the indented block. If it is false, we continue outside of that block. Go ahead and test this in your REPL environment. What will it output? The second type of statement follows the idea of if this, then do that. Otherwise, do something else. The else statement requires no conditional after it. It can sometimes be just a default case. In this case, we note that we evaluate if a condition is true or false. If it is true, we do a certain block of code. If it is false, we do the block of code that is indented within the else condition. Go ahead and type this in your REPL environment and see what it outputs. The third type of if and else condition will come like this. We will have many different cases of if and else that we want to check. For example, we would like to check one condition, and whether that's true or false, we would like to check another condition based off of that. For example, if you look in the chart, you can see that we evaluate if condition 1 is true or false. If it is true, we run statement 1 and move on to the next part of the program. If it is false, we check if condition 2 is true or false. If it is true, we check and run statement 2 and move on to the next part of the program. If it is false, we move on and check the next condition, and this can continue for as many conditions as you need. Usually, you will also end these kind of statements with an else statement to catch all or act as a default case. Go ahead and type this in your REPL environment and see what it will output. These are some important symbols to note when you are writing conditions in Python. We have our typical math symbols like greater than and less than, but we also have some special ones such as the not equal to symbol, which is just an exclamation point and equal sign. This can check if two things are not equal to each other. Please note that when you are trying to check if two variables are equal to each other, you would like to use two equal signs and not just one. If you use one equal sign, you are assigning a value. You are saying this variable equals whatever is on the right-hand side. If you use two equal signs, you are comparing two values. On top of that, we have three special word conditions, and, or not. Let us go over a practice problem. Write a program to check if a number is even or odd using the conditional statements you have just learned. Let's talk about loops. Loops make something happen over and over again. The most common type of loop is the for loop. The for loop is used to iterate over a sequence. These are great to use for lists, or when you have an idea of the number of times you want to repeat a block of code. Go ahead and type this out in your REPL environment and see what it will output. The second most common type of loop is called the while loop. These are great when you're waiting for something to happen. This will run a block of code until you meet a certain condition, upon which it will terminate. Go ahead and type this out in your REPL environment and see what will be the output. Let's try out this practice problem. Write a program to count the number of even and odd numbers from a series of numbers. For example, if we have a list of numbers 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, we would expect the output to be something like the number of even numbers, 5, number of odd numbers, 4. As a hint, you can use the modulus operator to check if the numbers are even or odd. Let's talk about break and continue statements. Break is used to exit a for or while loop. We will use it when we test a certain condition and find it true or false, and then break out of the code based on that. You can see that in the example here. Go ahead and run it in your REPL environment to see how break works. Continue is used to skip the current block and return to the for or while statement. This means that if a condition is held true or false, we will put continue in order to continue the loop rather than breaking out of it. This block of code shows you how. Go ahead and run it in your REPL environment. These two statements are very important when using while loops. As a practice problem, write a program that prints all the numbers from 0 to 6 except 3 and 6. You will have to use the continue function. The expected output should be 0, 1, 2, 4, and 5. This is session 3 of the coding module. In this session, we will go through several practice problems and open-ended problems. For review, remember a for loop is useful for iterating over a list. A while loop is useful for repeating something while a condition is true. Conditional statements like if, elif, and else are very important. Let's try this practice problem. Write a program to add two numbers. Go ahead and pause throughout this video to take the time to work on these practice problems. Let's try out this next practice problem. Write a program to find the area of a triangle. Remember what the area of a triangle is. Try using the formula provided and the formula you know and compare your results. Next, let's write a program to check if a given number is a prime number. Remember the definition of a prime number? Let's try something a little harder. Write a program to print the Fibonacci sequence. We start the sequence with the numbers 0 and 1. We get the next number in the sequence by adding the two previous numbers. For example, the number after 5 is 8 because 3 plus 5 is 8. This is a very common sequence found in nature all around us. Let's try a more open-ended problem. Go into the module and download the file called chooseyourownadventure.py. Go ahead and switch over to your REPL.it environment. You can click on the three dots here and click Upload File and choose from your Downloads folder to upload the file, or you can just drag and drop the file into here. Go ahead and click on this file. You will be working on this file. You can edit and be creative, do whatever you want with this file, mess around with the code, and there are no wrong answers, so whatever you choose to do will be correct. Let's try another open-ended problem. Create a Mad Libs type fill-in-the-blank story. First, create a simple story. For example, we can start with a name variable equal to Anna, an adjective variable equal to happy, and a sentence variable that adds the name and adjective variables to woke up in the morning feeling very, and add a period. Print this sentence, and you should get Anna woke up in the morning feeling very happy, period. Create 4 or 5 sentence variables that use 3 different noun variables, 3 different adjective variables, and 3 different place variables. For example, sentence 1 could equal, last year I went on a adjective 1, trip to, place 1. Sentence 2 could equal, The weather there was adjective 2, and I couldn't wait to eat a big. Noun 1, while I was there. Sentence 3 could equal, next year I want to go to place 2 because I've always wanted to see the adjective 3 and noun 2. Let's change the program so that all our adjectives are stored in a list called adlist. For example, this could contain wild, fluffy, hilarious. Now we want to randomly choose which adjectives will be assigned to adjective 1, 2, and 3. To do this, we will use the random library. Include the following line in the first line of your program. From random, include randint. Use the following lines of code to access your random index and assign a variable an adjective from the list. Try this with other variables and get creative. When you are done, please fill out the post survey. Hope you're now ready to code in Python.